The knock on my front door came just as the sky over Cedar Grove, Ohio, was fading into the soft gold of evening. It wasn't the knock itself that unsettled me. It was what followed. The woman standing on my porch looked as if she had spent years carrying a burden that had suddenly become too heavy to hold. Her hands trembled. Her eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion. And when she finally looked up at me, I realized I knew her. I hadn't seen Rachel Morrison in nearly 18 years. The last time I saw her, she walked away from our small town with a suitcase, a broken heart, and a promise that she would never come back. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. I stood frozen in the doorway as memories rushed back. Rachel had once been one of my closest friends. We grew up on neighboring farms, spent summers fishing by the creek, and dreamed about the futures we would build. Then, life happened. Her family moved away after a financial disaster, and over time our paths separated completely. I married, started a landscaping business, and settled into a quiet life. Rachel became a distant memory. But now she was standing on my porch, looking terrified. The silence between us stretched for several seconds. Before she stepped forward, tears filled her eyes. And she told me she needed help, not money, not a place to stay. What she wanted was something far more difficult. Something impossible. She wanted me to take custody of her son. The words hit me like a storm. Rachel explained that her 17-year-old son, Nathan, was sitting in her car parked across the street. She had been battling serious financial struggles for years. Medical bills from caring for her late husband had consumed everything she owned. She was about to lose her apartment. Her job was ending, and she had exhausted every option she could think of. But that wasn't what frightened her most. Nathan had been accepted into a prestigious engineering program in Michigan. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. The kind of opportunity that could completely change the direction of a young man's future. Yet he was prepared to give it up because he refused to leave his mother behind. Rachel had driven nearly 600 miles because she remembered something about me. She remembered that, when we were teenagers, I once spent an entire summer helping my elderly neighbor repair his home after a storm destroyed it. She remembered that I always believed people deserved help when life knocked them down. She looked at me and asked the impossible. Would I become the stable adult Nathan needed long enough for him to chase his future? I wanted to say no, not because I lacked compassion, but because my own life was complicated. My wife, Sarah, had passed away 3 years earlier after a long illness. Since then, I had learned to survive in solitude. My days were predictable, quiet, safe. Letting strangers into my life felt terrifying. That night, however, I met Nathan. He was polite, intelligent, and carrying a weight no teenager should have to carry. Every decision he made revolved around protecting his mother. Every dream he had was being sacrificed out of love. As the days passed, Rachel stayed in town while we worked through legal arrangements and possibilities. During that time, I witnessed something heartbreaking. Nathan never spoke about his own future without immediately worrying about Rachel. He had convinced himself that choosing his education meant abandoning her. I recognized that feeling. After Sarah died, I spent years believing that moving forward somehow meant leaving her behind. Maybe that was why Nathan's struggle felt so familiar. Over the next several weeks, our lives became unexpectedly intertwined. Rachel found temporary work in town. Nathan helped me on landscaping projects. Slowly, trust replaced awkwardness. Laughter returned to my home for the first time in years. Then came the day. Nathan had to decide. The engineering program deadline was approaching. If he didn't accept, the opportunity would disappear. The night before his decision, we sat on the back porch watching the sunset. The air was still, and the fields stretched endlessly beyond the fence line. Nathan finally admitted what had been haunting him. He was afraid that if he left, His mother would face her struggles alone. What he didn't know was that Rachel had already made her decision. The next morning, she handed him a letter. In it, she told him that every sacrifice she had ever made was for one purpose, giving him a chance at a better future. She explained that love was not holding someone back. Love was giving them the courage to go. There were tears that day, the kind that come from letting go of fear, rather than holding on to it. Nathan accepted the offer. Over the following months, something remarkable happened. Rachel stabilized her finances and eventually secured a permanent position with a local nonprofit organization. Nathan thrived in college. He called often, visited during breaks, and never stopped being devoted to his mother. And me, the impossible favor Rachel asked for ended up saving more than one life. The empty house that had echoed with loneliness became a place filled with purpose again. Holidays returned, family dinners returned, hope returned. Years later, when Nathan graduated at the top of his class, both Rachel and I sat in the audience. As he walked across the stage, I realized something beautiful. Sometimes, the impossible thing people ask from us isn't really impossible at all. Sometimes, it's simply an invitation to become part of someone else's miracle. Before we reach the end of this story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever given someone a second chance or received one when you needed it most? Leave a comment below and share your experience with our community. As Nathan stood proudly with his diploma in hand, Rachel quietly wiped away tears. The fear that had brought her to my doorstep all those years ago was gone. In its place stood gratitude, strength, and hope. A frightened mother had asked a stranger for the impossible, and together we discovered that kindness has a way of creating futures no one could predict. If this story touched your heart, please support the video with a like, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more uplifting stories. Sometimes, one act of compassion can change an entire life, and sometimes, it can change your own. And on warm summer evenings, whenever I hear a knock at my door, I'm reminded that the greatest blessings often arrive disguised as someone else's desperate need for help.